Hey guys, welcome to the Bitcoin Fortress podcast, helping you increase your financial freedom. This is episode 149, recorded here on January 12th, 2025. This podcast is for entertainment, not investing advice. Do your own homework. Well, we got a lot of stuff to go over. First of all, we'll start out with where we're at. We are at block 878,966, 1052 sats per dollar. Fees are 2, 2, and 2, high, medium, low. So low fee environment, sort of. We'll start with the market news update outlook, get into the weekly top Bitcoin news, talk about this week's featured post on the Bitcoin Fortress Substack. And then we'll do shout outs on Fountain and then wrap it up. So, with that, we'll jump right in. Wall Street slumped nearly 2% for the holiday shortened week as a spate of economic data on the labor market and inflation sparked a major recalibration of Federal Reserve interest rate cuts. Add to that comments from several central bank policymakers hinting that the rate easing cycle might be done for now, which meant that traders currently see only two rate cuts this year. Markets were shut on Thursday for a national day of mourning for former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. A better than expected job openings reading for November 2024, along with a significantly stronger than anticipated non farm payrolls report for December 2024, suggested that the labor market had once again become highly resilient after showing considerable cooling in the middle of last year. Darn it, more jobs! We must stop this. For a Fed that wants to ease monetary policy, the data was a spanner in the works. Ah, good news is bad news. Additionally, there were some concerning inflationary indicators. Prices paid by services organizations for materials and services increased to a nearly 2 year high in December. Meanwhile, a gauge of long run inflation expectations among consumers soared to its highest level since 2008. People are expecting inflation. Trouble. Traders also received the minutes of the Fed's December 2024 Monetary Policy Committee meeting, which confirmed that committee participants believed they were at or near the point at which it would be appropriate to slow the pace of policy easing. The benchmark S&P 500 has now wiped out all the gains it made in the fledgling year. The focus turns to the earnings season, which will kick off in earnest in the second half of January. The political landscape is also very much on investors' minds, with incoming U.S. President Donald Trump's inauguration fast approaching. For the week, the S&P 500 slipped 1.9%, while the blue chip Dow also fell 1.9%. The Nasdaq shed 2.3%. So, not a great week for the stonks. Looking ahead, the first full trading week of the year will be a busy one for Wall Street. Inflation will be front and center with the December 2024 producer and consumer price reports scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively. The economic calendar will also see the Fed Beige Book on regional U.S. economic activity and the retail sales update for December 2024. It's also that time of the year once again, earnings season. Major U.S. lenders JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citi, and Wells Fargo will be kicking things off on Wednesday, followed by Dow 30 component United Health on Thursday, and the world's biggest oilfield services and equipment provider, SLB, on Friday. Some high profile conferences will also grab some attention. The ICR Retail Conference will see participation from heavyweights such as Walmart and Macy's. The JP Morgan Healthcare Conference will thrust the pharmaceutical sector into the spotlight. All right, jumping into the Bitcoin news, we'll start with block 878,939. Important news of the week from No BS Bitcoin. Always love this because they do a pretty good job of covering everything important. First up, U.S. court greenlights sale of 6.5 billion in seized Silk Road Bitcoin. So some FUD to start out. The U.S. government has received final approval from the Northern District Court of California to liquidate 69,370 Bitcoin from federal seizure, ending a 4-year legal battle tied to the Silk Road marketplace. Chief Judge Richard Seaborg denied a motion to block the forfeiture, allowing the DOJ to sell the assets valued at $6.5 billion through immediate liquidation, though immediate liquidation is not guaranteed due to administrative processes. And that would be pretty funny if they sold it and then would have to buy it back at a higher price, just like what happened to Germany with their paper hands. Coinbase user sentenced to 2 years for Bitcoin tax fraud to surrender access to $124 million Bitcoin fortune. Frank Richard Algren III now owes the government around $1 million in restitution from the criminal case and must provide any physical devices, along with any public keys, private keys, seed phrases, or passphrases used to store the coins, ruled the U.S. District Judge Robert Pittman on Monday in federal court in Austin, Texas. I might be tempted to have a boating accident. Anchor Watch is now open for business in the United States. Anchor Watch offers insured self-custody services using its Miniscript-based Trident Vault. It currently serves customers based in the United States who hold between 250,000 and 100 million in Bitcoin. You can learn more about its offerings here, and there's a link. U.S. Appeals Court strikes down net neutrality rules. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the FCC cannot regulate wireless and home broadband services under traditional communication service rules. The three-judge panel cited the Supreme Court decision in Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimundo, bing, 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 which overturned Chevron deference, which required courts to defer to regulatory agencies on ambiguous laws. So it begins. FDIC releases unredacted letters urging banks to avoid Bitcoin activities. Coinbase's chief legal officer, Paul Grewal, shared unredacted versions of documents related to Operation Chokepoint 2.0, obtained through a court-ordered Freedom of Information Act request. The letters reveal that the FDIC repeatedly urged banks to suspend crypto-related services and activities pending further regulatory reviews. It took a court order, but you can now read them for yourself below. They show a coordinated effort to stop a wide variety of crypto activity, everything from basic Bitcoin transactions to more complex offerings, said Gruwal. Bitcoin Policy UK released guidance and commentary to UK's the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework 2025. What's being proposed under the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework, or CARF? It's proposed that tax authorities worldwide will gather and have access to information on cryptocurrency transactions, allegedly to combat tax evasion and ensure compliance with tax laws, said the organization. UK judge dismisses $770 million Bitcoin landfill hard drive case. A UK judge has dismissed James Howell's legal case to recover a hard drive containing 8,000 Bitcoin mined in 2009 from a landfill. Howells accidentally discarded the hard drive in 2013 when Bitcoin was trading at only $13. The judge noted that there was no realistic chance of success and upheld the council's claim that it owned the hard drive, ruling that Howells was not entitled to attempt its retrieval. South Korea's financial regulator plans to gradually permit institutional investment in cryptocurrencies. According to local media reports, under the country's Act on Financial Information Use, only retail traders verified with their government names can trade cryptocurrencies. While there is no formal ban on institutional investors, the Financial Services Commission has advised banks to prevent institutions from opening accounts on exchanges, reports the block. Bitcoin Freedom Act introduced in Oklahoma. Senator Dusty Devers has proposed the Bitcoin Freedom Act, a legislative initiative to integrate Bitcoin into Oklahoma's economy. The bill, SB 325, would allow employees to choose Bitcoin as a payment option and enable vendors to accept Bitcoin transactions. It guarantees that participation is voluntary, upholding free market principles, and empowering employees, employers, and businesses to select the payment methods that suit them best. In a time when inflation is eroding the purchasing power of hardworking Oklahomans, Bitcoin provides a unique opportunity to protect earnings and investments as Bitcoin continues to rise and the value of the dollar continues to be printed away in Washington, D.C. Oklahoma must act to protect our people, Devers said. Bravo. Bhutan's Galepu Mindfulness City wants to integrate Bitcoin and other digital assets into strategic reserves. Galepu Mindfulness City in Bhutan has announced plans to recognize digital assets like Bitcoin, Ether, and BNB as part of its strategic reserves. The inclusion of these assets aims to bolster the GMC's economic resilience and reflects an evolution in the region's involvement in Bitcoin mining. Pierre Poilievre leads Polymarket odds to become Canada's next prime minister. The pro-Bitcoin politician and leader of Canada's Conservative Party is the frontrunner in Polymarket odds to replace Justin Trudeau as prime minister following Trudeau's resignation announcement on Monday, reports The Block. Governors of the Czech National Bank are open to the idea of including Bitcoin in the country's foreign exchange reserves, though no concrete plans are in place yet. Currently, the CNB's diversification strategy aims to increase its gold holdings, targeting a gold share of about 5% of total assets by 2028. The investment in Bitcoin would be minor for the bank and would need approval from its 7-member board. The Syrian Center for Economic Research proposes transitional government to legislate Bitcoin and digitize the lira. Contrary to some reports from crypto media, the transitional government has not approved or considered this proposal and is unlikely to do so in the near future due to more pressing issues at hand, said Bamsky, like social unrest, I guess. Thailand plans to trial KYC Bitcoin payments in Phuket for tourists. The country's deputy prime minister and finance minister Pichai Chunhavajira announced a new initiative during a seminar organized by the Marketing Association of Thailand, reports Nation Thailand. Foreign tourists in the pilot program may be able to register their coin through a Thai exchange and verify their identities before using the coins to purchase goods and services. A clearinghouse would subsequently convert the coins into Thai baht. No thanks. Thai police sees 996 Bitcoin miners amid energy theft allegations. The Bangkok Post reports that local police and electricity officials in Chonburi's Banat Nikam district seized 996 Bitcoin mining machines from a company accused of illegally stealing large amounts of electricity to power the operations. Kazakhstan shut down 36 illegal cryptocurrency exchanges in 2024 as part of its efforts to combat money laundering. Licensed global exchanges, including Binance, Bybit, Upbit, and others, continue to operate legally in the country. Among the platforms that went offline, 2 were identified as operating pyramid schemes. So far, the Kazakh government has shut down over 3,500 unlicensed crypto exchanges in cooperation with government agencies. Russia is liquidating 1,032 Bitcoin confiscated in a corruption case, another case of nation state paper hands. The country's authorities have begun liquidating 1,032.1 Bitcoin confiscated from Marat Tambiev, a former chief investigator for the Russian Investigative Committee, with Moscow initially selling nearly $10 million worth of Bitcoin, reports Atlas 21. Tambiev, a chief investigator in Moscow, was convicted of accepting a Bitcoin bribe from the Infraud hacker group and aiding them in hiding $137 million in cryptocurrency. Jan 3 raises $5 million to accelerate Aqua wallet development. The $5 million seed round was led by Folger Ventures with participation from Grupo Salinas, Tether, Lightning Ventures, East Ventures, Plan B Fund, Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, and NYDIG. The firm also announced an establishment of its Bitcoin treasury, stating that it now holds 12 Bitcoin acquired at an average cost of $83,333 per coin. Cypherpunk Nick Szabo joins Jan3 as chief scientist. As chief scientist, Nick Szabo will spearhead our research initiatives to advance Jan3's mission of accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization. Nick will explore Bitcoin's implications on topics ranging from monetary policy to international trade and financial sovereignty, the company announced in a blog post. Alpen Labs announced an $8.5 million strategic round to launch Strata. Strata is a programmable layer designed to maintain parity with Bitcoin. The round was co-led by DBA and Cyberfund. TimechainIndex.com is shutting down on January 10th, 2025. It is a platform that monitors Bitcoin holdings across exchanges, funds, ETFs, and companies, providing real-time data and insights. This past year has been an incredible journey, and I'm deeply grateful for your support and engagement. Whether you visited the site once or were a frequent user, I hope it made a difference for you in some way. Additionally, if the data from the website could be of use to anyone, it is available for sale. Please feel free to reach out to me through DM or at Sani@timechainindex.com for inquiries, said the project's developer, Sani. MicroStrategy has acquired 1,070 Bitcoin for about $101 million at an average price of $94,004 per Bitcoin. The company now holds a total of 447,470 Bitcoin, valued at over $44 billion. Curl Technology Group has purchased an additional 213.4 Bitcoin for $21 million, bringing its total holdings to approximately 430.58 Bitcoin, acquired for a total of $42 million. El Salvador has added another 11 Bitcoin to its Bitcoin reserves, bringing the total to more than 6,022 coins. The country has been acquiring Bitcoin at an accelerated pace since December 19th, following its loan agreement with the International Monetary Fund. Fitch Ratings upgrades El Salvador's credit rating to B- following IMF loan agreement. Fitch expects the program to support implementation of fiscal consolidation measures, which should reduce financing needs, the agency stated. These efforts are expected to foster a more stable fiscal environment, potentially enabling future debt issuances, reports TFTC. Thumbs Up Media Corp adds 9.783 Bitcoin to its reserves. The purchase cost approximately $1 million at an average price of 102,220 per coin. Company's management is seeking approval from its board of directors to allocate up to 90% of its liquid assets for ongoing Bitcoin purchases as part of its treasury asset strategy, as stated in a press release. Canaan introduces Avalon Mini 3 and Nano 3S Bitcoin home miners and heaters. Canaan unveiled the Avalon Mini 3 at CES 2025 in Las Vegas. This device is a 37.5 terahash per second Bitcoin miner, but also functions as a home heater. The Avalon Nano 3S is an upgraded version of the well-received Avalon Nano 3, featuring a hash rate of 6 terahash per second. This device is designed as an affordable, beginner-friendly Bitcoin mining option, complementing the Avalon Mini 3. Bitcoin miner CleanSpark increased its Bitcoin stash to 9,952 coins. Company said it mined 668 Bitcoin in December and 7,024 Bitcoin for the entire year. The company's hash rate increased by 287.9 year over year. Bitcoin miner Mara lends 16% of its Bitcoin reserves to generate yield. Uh-oh. I wouldn't do that, but we'll see how that plays out. The company has deployed 16% of its Bitcoin holdings, totaling 7,377 Bitcoin, valued at nearly $730 million, to undisclosed third parties in short-term loans to generate a modest single-digit yield. The company also announced that it surpassed its December hash rate target of 50 exahash per second and increased its overall holdings to 44,893 Bitcoin, including the loans. Core Scientific liquidated 79 of 291 mined Bitcoin in December. This move potentially signals the miners return to a partial hodl strategy following 2 years of full liquidation, reports the Miner Mag. Ethiopia reaches 1.5% share of global Bitcoin hash rate. Chinese firm BitMining has expanded into Africa by acquiring a Bitcoin mining facility in Ethiopia for $14.28 million. Finalized on December 3rd, the strategic move positions Ethiopia as a significant contributor to the global Bitcoin network hash rate at 1.5%, comparable to Norway's importance, reports Atlas 21. African Bitcoiners partners with Citrus Rate. African Bitcoiners has announced a partnership with Citrus Rate aimed at bringing its Bitcoin for Beginners course to more people across Africa, empowering local communities with the tools for financial freedom. The Bitcoin Students Network launches Layer Zero program. The program provides students with a hands-on, all expenses paid 2.5 month experience, pairing them with entrepreneurs and builders in global communities. Participants will actively contribute to shaping the future of Bitcoin while promoting financial inclusion and economic empowerment. Applications are open for the Layer Zero program. You can apply here. There's a link before the deadline on February 15th. Bitcoin prediction market Predix is back online following an attack that took the platform offline for a day. A root cause analysis and the mitigation report are expected to be published soon. Recently, we experienced an attack that targeted a security vulnerability in our system. Thanks to our quick response, we were able to mitigate the attack within minutes. Unfortunately, the attacker did manage to drain some liquidity from our markets, said the platform. Divest OS shuts down following 10 years of development. Divest OS, a privacy and security oriented mobile operating system that supports end of life devices, has announced its final update and discontinuation of the open source project. Users looking for alternatives to Divest OS can explore options like Graphene OS, Calyx OS, Lineage OS, and some others. Latest ransom kidnappings in France, Canada, and Pakistan. This is why you need to be low key about your Bitcoin holdings. France, Le Mans police rescued a man discovered tied up in a car trunk. His captors had demanded a ransom from his son, a crypto influencer residing in Dubai. Canada, a volunteer moderator of a crypto forum, has gone into hiding with his family after kidnappers reportedly tried to abduct him to coerce him into surrendering his Bitcoin. Pakistan, a crypto trader was kidnapped from Manghopir on December 25th and regained his freedom only after paying a $340,000 ransom in digital assets through his Binance account. So the lesson, and this is, I think this is only going to get worse, the more valuable Bitcoin becomes. So definitely want to be low key about the Bitcoin, and probably best to keep your keys in multiple locations and yeah, just enjoy it, and you don't need to be advertising for sure. UK authorities seize $4.3 million worth of Bitcoin held in Coinbase Kenya account from a fugitive drug lord. A UK judge mandated the seizure after the Crown Prosecution Service revealed that Surin had provided only two fake invoices and failed to explain his wealth following previous asset seizures. In an email, Surin claimed there was no evidence of his criminal involvement and that the coins were lawfully earned through gold bullion trading in Dubai. Telegram provided data on more than 2,200 users last year to U.S. authorities alone, reports 404 Media. This number does not account for data requests from other countries. Guess it's not that private. The fifth Bitcoin Educators Unconference by Mi Primer Bitcoin will take place on April 10th in Bitcoin Park, Nashville. More details are coming soon. Bitcoin Diploma for Veterans by Operation Bitcoin. Pre-enrollment is now open for the January 2025 cohort of the Bitcoin Diploma for Veterans. Enrollment closes January 20th and spaces are limited. This 10-week course This is designed to equip attendees with the fundamental knowledge to confidently engage with Bitcoin, and you can enroll here, and there is a link. Applications to Summer of Bitcoin 2025 to commence on February 1st, 2025. Summer of Bitcoin is a global online internship program designed to introduce university students to Bitcoin open source development and design. You can sign up for an application reminder here, and there is a link. Undermine 2025, the Heat Punk Summit, a 2-day conference dedicated to the emerging field of hash rate heating, is set to take place in Denver's Bitcoin Hub on February 21st to February 22nd, 2025. Learn more about the event here, and there is a link. Lots of Bitcoin conferences coming up. Meet Premier Bitcoin launched a community hub for independent Bitcoin educators. The project has launched a community hub that enables independent Bitcoin educators to begin teaching the open source Bitcoin diploma using various wikis. It also facilitates connections among numerous educators involved in similar initiatives worldwide. The Bitcoin City Hackathon by Bitcoin Indonesia. This event is set to take place online from January 10th to 31st. Learn more about it here. There's a link. Bitcoin Boma's exclusive course for learning Bitcoin in Malawi. Bitcoin Boma, a nonprofit organization, has partnered with Me Premier Bitcoin to launch a free Bitcoin education course in Malawi. Interested parties can apply here, and there's a link. Bitcoin Circular Economy Summit in El Zante. The 3-day event is scheduled for January 27th to 29th, right before the Plan B Forum, El Salvador. And that wraps up quite a lengthy important news of the week. Moving on to Hodler's Digest from Cointelegraph, January 5th through 11th. We will skip the shitcoinery unless it's funny. Let's see. New Hampshire, North Dakota introduced bills for strategic Bitcoin reserve. I actually am going to go through that in more detail next, so we'll skip over that. Bitcoin corporate treasury shareholder proposal submitted to Meta. A Meta shareholder proposal submitted by Ethan Peck requested that the social media company convert a portion of its $72 billion in cash and short-term cash equivalents to Bitcoin as a hedge against currency debasement. Peck wrote that Meta is losing 28% of its cash assets over time due to inflation and cited Bitcoin outperforming bonds by 1,262% over the past 5 years as evidence for adopting the asset. Peck also wrote in the proposal, Mark Zuckerberg named his GOATs Bitcoin and Max. Meta director Mark Andreessen has praised Bitcoin and is also a director at Coinbase. Do Meta shareholders not deserve the same kind of responsible asset allocation for the company that Meta directors and executives likely implement for themselves? Peck is an employee of the National Center for Public Policy Research, a Washington, D.C. based think tank promoting free market policies, which submitted Bitcoin Treasury shareholder proposals to Microsoft and Amazon in 2024. However, Peck submitted the Meta proposal on behalf of his family's shares. Bybit Exchange suspends services in India due to regulatory pressure. Bybit, a global crypto exchange, announced a temporary suspension of its crypto trading services in India, citing regulatory developments. Starting January 12th at 8 a.m. UTC, Bybit will restrict several services, including cryptocurrency trading, account openings, and placing orders through other exchange products. Bybit attributed the decision to its goal of operating in full compliance with all applicable rules and regulations. The exchange stated in a January 10th announcement, adding, due to recent developments from Indian regulators and in continuation of previously implemented restrictions, Indian users will temporarily be unable to open new trades or access any products on the Bybit platform. The announcement said that while trading services are halted, user fund withdrawals are unaffected. 56% of advisors more likely to invest in crypto after Trump win, according to a Bitwise survey. More than half of US-based financial advisors responding to a survey by Bitwise said they're more inclined to invest in crypto due to Donald Trump's United States presidential election victory. Bitwise's latest survey, conducted from November 14th to December 20th, asked 430 financial advisors about their attitudes toward crypto, with 56% indicating they are more likely to invest in crypto this year following the US election results on November 5th. The crypto industry is widely anticipating President elect Donald Trump's help in steering the US toward a more crypto friendly environment. Jack Mallers, founder and CEO of Strike, said it's possible that Trump could issue an executive order on his first day in office designating Bitcoin as a US reserve asset. A UK judge dismisses $770 million Bitcoin landfill hard drive case. We already went over that. And crypto headed for banana singularity, where everything goes up, according to an analyst. Crypto markets are in the banana zone and heading into a banana singularity, or a period when everything goes up, according to Real Vision co-founder and CEO Raoul Pal. Oh, there's a legit voice. The banana zone is the term coined by Powell to describe a period of significant upward price movement. Yes, we are still in the banana zone, Powell said in an X post on January 10th, before adding that the first phase of this bull market was the breakout in November last year. That has been followed by the current period of consolidation, similar to the 2016-2017 cycle, Powell said before adding, this won't last long. Looking ahead, Powell said the next phase of the banana zone is a banana singularity, an altcoin season when everything goes up, followed by a bigger consolidation. So there's some hopium there for you. Flood of the week. Blender and Sinbad operators face U.S. money laundering charges. The U.S. Justice Department has indicted 3 Russian nationals alleged to have committed money laundering due to their involvement in operating cryptocurrency mixers, Blender.io and Sinbad.io. In a January 10th notice, U.S. authorities said a federal grand jury in the Northern District of Georgia returned an indictment for Roman Vitalyevich Ostapenko, Alexander Evgenovich Olenik, and Anton Vyalovich Tarasov. The indictment alleged that the crypto mixing services operated by the 3 men allowed criminals to launder funds stolen from victims of ransomware, virtual currency thefts, and other crimes, according to U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan. Russia seizes 10 million in Bitcoin from ex-official in bribery case. The Russian government confiscated 10 million Bitcoin, 10 million worth of Bitcoin from a former law enforcement official, according to local reports. Russian court enforcement officers have been confiscating Bitcoin from a former employee at investigative committee of the Russian Federation in a massive bribery case involving cryptocurrency. We already heard about the Thai police seizing 1,000 Bitcoin miners in a raid. And that about wraps it up for the Hodler's Digest for this week. So moving on, next article is from Cointelegraph. New Hampshire, North Dakota introduced bills for strategic Bitcoin reserve. So we'll go into this one. New Hampshire and North Dakota have become the latest U.S. states to introduce legislation for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, signaling a continued push among lawmakers to diversify state treasuries with the cryptocurrency. According to Satoshi Action Fund CEO Dennis Porter, the New Hampshire bill was introduced by Representative Keith Ammon, a Republican who represents the 40th District. The New Hampshire bill doesn't explicitly mention Bitcoin, but instead refers to digital assets. Porter said this is a way for state lawmakers to push through the legislation without causing political friction. The intent is for Bitcoin, but oftentimes that's not possible depending on the state, said Porter. On the same day, legislation for a strategic Bitcoin reserve was also introduced in North Dakota, championed by Representative Nathan Toman, Representative Josh Christie, and Senator Jeff Barta. The North Dakota bill already has 11 sponsors, Porter said in a separate statement on the X social media platform. In November, The Pennsylvania House of Representatives introduced its own legislation for a state level Bitcoin reserve modeled after a proposal from the Satoshi Action Fund. At the time, Representative Mike Cabell called Bitcoin a hedge against inflation and other forms of economic instability. Talks of a strategic Bitcoin reserve have intensified since the summer when the presidential candidate Donald Trump promised to make America the crypto and Bitcoin capital of the world if he won the presidency. This promise included ordering the Treasury Department to buy a huge stockpile of Bitcoin. After Trump won the November presidential election, industry advocates have been eager to see the president elect follow through on his promise. Some observers, like Strike CEO Jack Mallers, say Trump could sign an executive order making Bitcoin a reserve asset on, quote, day one. However, others, like Galaxy Digital founder Mike Novogratz, believe a Bitcoin reserve is unlikely to materialize. Bettors on Polymarket say there's only a 27% chance that Trump will establish a Bitcoin reserve in his first 100 days in office. This figure was as high as 45% in November. Next up, this is from Decrypt. This was from January 10th. This publicly traded distiller is launching a Bitcoin treasury reserve. The number of publicly traded companies adopting the Bitcoin standard is growing. And the latest to go in on the Orange coin is spirits firm Heritage Distilling. Heritage Distilling, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker CASK, or CASK, said Friday that it would start to hold the cryptocurrency as a strategic asset and accept it for payments. Plan is subject to approval, the company said, and Heritage will first craft a policy plan for the board to greenlight before anything happens. But the Gig Harbor, Washington based company said it was recognizing the millions of consumers who already hold and use Bitcoin as an asset and as currency on a regular basis. Heritage's CEO, Justin Stiefel, said in a statement, Heritage has always been an innovator, and once again, we are leading the way in the craft spirit space as we prepare to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment for online e-commerce sales and to acquire and hold Bitcoin as an asset. Cask finished the day down 2.5% at a price of $1.55. The stock's price is down 47% over the last month. The company has probably taken inspiration from MicroStrategy, the quiet software company turned Bitcoin treasury giant. MicroStrategy first bought Bitcoin in 2020 as a way to get bigger returns for shareholders and fight inflation. It now holds 447,470 Bitcoin in total, which at today's current price of $94,781 is a stash worth $42.4 billion. MicroStrategy founder Michael Saylor has argued that other companies should follow suit to get the best returns for shareholders. Other public companies, albeit small ones, have done the same in the past year as the price of Bitcoin has touched new highs, with healthcare company Cosmos Health and auto firm Worksport being notable examples. So then I thought I'd go into some, because I saw some articles in the mainstream media, so it'll be interesting to see what they want us to think about Bitcoin. So here we have NBC News. Bitcoin soared in 2024. How much, if any, should you own? Bitcoin prices soared in 2024, but you may want to tread with caution before euphoria leads you on a hasty buying spree. Bitcoin and other crypto still generally account for just a sliver of investor portfolios, generally no more than 5% due to its extreme volatility, according to financial experts. Some investors may be wise to stay away from it altogether, they said. You're not going to have the same size allocation in Bitcoin as you would Nasdaq or S&P 500, said Ivory Johnson, a certified financial planner and founder of Delancey Wealth Management based in Washington, D.C. Whenever you have a real volatile asset class, you need less of it in the portfolio to have the same impact as traditional assets like stocks and bonds, said Johnson, a member of the CNBC Financial Advisor Council. Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency, was the top performing investment of 2024 by a long shot. Prices surged about 125%, ending the year around $94,000 after starting in the $40,000 range. By comparison, the S&P 500, a U.S. stock index, rose 23%. The Nasdaq tech-heavy stock index grew 29%. Prices popped after Donald Trump's U.S. presidential election win. His administration is expected to embrace deregulatory policies that would spur crypto demand. Last year, the Securities and Exchange Commission also, for the first time, approved exchange-traded funds that invest directly in Bitcoin and Ether, the second largest cryptocurrency, making crypto easier for retail investors to buy. But experts caution that lofty profits may belie an underlying danger. With high returns come high risk, and crypto is no exception, Amy Arnott, a portfolio strategist for Morningstar Research Services, wrote in June. Bitcoin has been nearly 5 times as volatile as US stocks since September 2015, and Ether has been nearly 10 times as volatile, Arnott wrote. A portfolio weighting of 5% or less seems prudent, and many investors may want to skip cryptocurrency altogether, she said. Okay. 1 to 2% is reasonable for Bitcoin, BlackRock says. Bitcoin lost 64% and 74% of its value in 22 and 2018, respectively. Mathematically, investors need a 100% return to recover from a 50% loss. So far, crypto returns have been high enough to offset its additional risk, but it's not a given that pattern will continue, Arnott said. There are a few reasons for this. Crypto has become less valuable as a portfolio diversifier as it's gotten more mainstream, Arnott wrote. Its popularity among speculative buyers also makes it prone to pricing bubbles that will eventually burst, she added. But isn't that true of every other asset market? BlackRock, a money manager, thinks there's a case for owning Bitcoin in a diversified portfolio for investors who are comfortable with the risk of potentially rapid price plunges and who believe it will become more widely adopted, experts at the BlackRock Investment Institute wrote in early December. A 1 to 2% allocation to Bitcoin is a reasonable range, BlackRock experts wrote. Going beyond would sharply increase Bitcoin's share of a portfolio's total risk, they said. For example, a 2% Bitcoin allocation accounts for roughly 5% of the risk of a traditional 60-40 portfolio, BlackRock estimated, but a 4% allocation swells that figure to 14% of total portfolio risk, it said. By comparison, Vanguard, another asset manager, doesn't currently have plans to launch a crypto ETF or offer it on its brokerage platform, officials said. In Vanguard's view, crypto is more of a speculation than an investment. Janelle Jackson, Vanguard's former global head of ETF capital markets and broker and index relations, wrote in January 2024. Stock investors own shares of companies that produce goods or services, and many investors get dividends. Bond investors receive regular interest payments, and commodities are real assets that meet consumption needs, Jackson wrote. While crypto has been classified as a commodity, it's an immature asset class and has little history, no inherent economic value, no cash flow, and can create havoc within a portfolio, wrote Jackson, now an executive in the firm's financial advisor services unit. Wow. Okay. That's complete bullshit, but thank you. Ultimately, one's total crypto allocation is the function of an investor's appetite for an ability to take risk. According to financial advisors, younger, more aggressive investors might allocate more crypto to their portfolios, said Douglas Bonaparte, the CFP based in New York and member of CNBC's Advisor Council. Investors generally hold about 5% of their classic 80-20 or 60-40 portfolio in crypto, said Bonaparte, president and founder of Bonafide Wealth. I think it could be a good idea to have some exposure to Bitcoin in your portfolio, but it's not for everyone and it will remain volatile, Bonaparte said. As far as other cryptocurrencies are concerned, it's difficult to pinpoint which ones are poised to be a good long-term investment. That's not to say there won't be winners. Investors who want to buy into crypto should consider using a dollar cost averaging strategy, said Johnson of Delancey Wealth Management. I buy 1% at a time until I get to my target risk, Johnson said, and that way I'm not putting 3, 4, or 5% at one time and then something happens where it drops precipitously. It'd also be prudent for investors interested in crypto to buy and hold it for the long term as they would with other financial assets, Johnson said. Morningstar suggests holding cryptocurrency for at least 10 years, Arnott wrote. Ah, boy, they have a long way to go to understand Bitcoin, but it's really not a speculation. It's sound money. I hate to say it. It's actually money you can save in. Okay, well, let's see what else we got here. This is from Forbes. This is an opinion piece on January 12th, 2025 by Billy Bambrow. Bitcoin and crypto prices have soared since the election of incoming US President Donald Trump, who is plotting a Bitcoin price game changer after predicting Bitcoin could eclipse gold. The Bitcoin price has, however, dropped back after topping $100,000 per Bitcoin, sparking fears of a looming crypto market crash. Now, as traders scramble to stay ahead of the Federal Reserve, analysts have warned of a possible Fed crisis that could spark another Bitcoin price boom. Current inflation measures, such as consumer price index and producer price index, are significantly lower than previous 40-year highs. However, they remain stubborn or sticky, resisting a return to the central bank's preferred 2% target. Fidelity Digital Assets Research Director Chris Cooper wrote in a report that asked, "Why is no one talking about stagflation, defined as a combination of low economic growth and persistently high inflation?" Combine this with continued large and structural fiscal deficits, along with a Fed that has now embarked on a rate cutting cycle, and it is not difficult to imagine inflation coming back in a second wave. If this trend continues and the outcome is anything worse than a soft landing and a historically typical recession, it could quickly escalate into stagflation. U.S. debt has soared over recent years, topping $34 trillion at the beginning of 2024, with COVID and lockdown stimulus measures contributing to massive government spending and helping to send inflation spiraling out of control in 2022. Inflation of over 10% forced the Federal Reserve to hike interest rates at a historical clip, pushing up debt interest payments and fueling fears of a death spiral. Last year, Jamie Dimon, the influential chief executive of Wall Street giant JP Morgan, said he wouldn't rule out a stagflation scenario emerging, even as inflation began to come off its recent highs. While last month, tech investor and podcaster Chamath Palihapitiya called stagflation one of his key words for 2025. Earlier this month, analysts at the Kobesi letter said they saw more evidence of stagflation, warning we have rising prices with a weakening labor market. Stagflation is here. On Friday, the latest U.S. job numbers showed hiring accelerated in December, smashing expectations and putting immediate plans for further Fed interest rate cuts on ice. After Fed Chair Jerome Powell kicked off a cutting cycle in September, then it continued with a further reduction in December. There are very real concerns over the Federal Reserve's slower than anticipated interest rate cuts, and this might be weighing on speculative assets like Bitcoin. Also, this is being fueled by stronger than expected U.S. economic data, including robust job openings and purchasing managers' index figures, James Toledano, chief operating officer at Unity Wallet, said in emailed comments. This heightens fears of lingering inflation, which pushes rate expectations higher and therefore limits liquidity for risk driven markets. Some have also warned U.S. President elect Donald Trump's plans for massive tariffs and large scale deportations of illegal immigrants could stoke further inflation. Also, we can't forget that there's been massive profit taking after Bitcoin's stellar 2024 rally, driven by optimism surrounding Donald Trump's pro crypto stance, Toledano said. Now everyone is holding their breath for Trump's inauguration on January 20th, when the expectation is that crypto will surge again. So this is very much the downturn before the storm. There's also much uncertainty over his administration's policy rollout, and this could be curbing investor enthusiasm too. Traders are betting the Fed will keep interest rates on hold during its January meeting, according to CME FedWatch tool. In December, the Fed projected only 2 quarter-point rate cuts this year compared to the four it had forecast in September, referencing the economy's strength and sticky inflation. If the Fed cuts rates while inflation continues to increase, it risks creating a situation of rising prices and slowing growth, a combination that could lead to stagflation. Haider Rafik, Global Chief Marketing Officer at the Bitcoin and crypto exchange XBTO, said in an emailed comments in the aftermath of the Fed's December interest rate cut. Such a scenario would pose a significant challenge for both traditional markets and digital asset sector as investor confidence might waver amidst uncertain economic conditions. This coming week, the next CPI report is expected to show inflation of 2.8% in December, up from 2.7% a month earlier, according to economists polled by Reuters. We think if the US were to encounter a stagflation scenario, the performance of Bitcoin would depend on the fiscal and monetary policy response. If fiscal and monetary institutions chose to fight the stag part of the problem through increased spending or monetary tools, Bitcoin could potentially perform well, albeit likely with another lag, Cooper wrote, pointing to gold's performance through the stagflation era of the 1970s and early 80s. And I don't know, my opinion is that's probably where we're headed. Seems like. What do you invest in when you have inflation? Well, what is inflation? Inflation is the value of your dollars going down. What do you want? You want assets that are scarce. What is that? Bitcoin. Yes. And some more mainstream media, another opinion piece. This is from The Hill. And this is dated January 12th. How Trump could break Bitcoin. So I thought this would be kind of interesting. As Donald Trump gears up for his second term with the inauguration less than 2 weeks away, the crypto world is buzzing. Bitcoin prices have surged on the back of his bold promises to turn the United States into a global hub for cryptocurrency innovation and to wield executive power in favor of crypto adoption. On the surface, this may seem like a dream come true for Bitcoin maximalists and crypto enthusiasts alike. But I suggest Trump's love affair with Bitcoin isn't a triumph of decentralized finance over the establishment. It's the establishment tightening its grip over decentralized finance. Bitcoin was born out of the 2008 financial crisis as a direct challenge to centralized authority and a financial system that prioritized the few over the many. Its pseudonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, envisioned a currency immune to government manipulation. But as Bitcoin gains traction in Washington and Trump positions the US as the world's crypto capital, the line between revolution and co-optation blurs dangerously. His proposal to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve mirroring the nation's oil reserve sends a clear signal. The government is moving to institutionalize and dominate what was once a symbol of anti-establishment defiance. What begins as a reserve could evolve into a heavy-handed oversight, including strict know your customer laws, unprecedented surveillance, and potentially taxation policies that bleed Bitcoin's libertarian ethos dry. In time, Bitcoin could become just another cog in the machinery of state control, a far cry from its anarchic origins. Surveillance capitalism meets crypto. Trump's affinity for Bitcoin is not an isolated phenomenon. It mirrors a broader societal shift where disruptive technologies, once heralded as tools of liberation, become instruments of power consolidation. Consider Silicon Valley, which began as a hub for dreamers, tinkerers, and disruptors. Today, it's a fortress of surveillance capitalism closely aligned with government interests. Companies like Google and Meta now operate as quasi government entities, collecting troves of data and shaping narratives under the guise of public safety. The same trajectory looms for Bitcoin. With Trump's pro crypto agenda, we're likely to see increased government partnerships with major crypto exchanges and blockchain firms. These partnerships could undermine the privacy and autonomy that attracted libertarians and anti establishment figures to crypto in the first place. Imagine a future where every Bitcoin transaction is logged, analyzed, and weaponized, not just against criminals, but against ordinary citizens who dissent from the state's agenda. You won't have to imagine for long. That future is fast approaching. A Bitcoin true to its original design is fundamentally incompatible with government control. The death of decentralization. For years, Bitcoin enthusiasts, myself included, have touted decentralization as its greatest strength. But decentralization doesn't just happen. It requires a community fiercely resistant to centralized control. Under Trump's administration, the U.S. could incentivize miners to relocate to American soil, lured by subsidies and promises of regulatory leniency. This concentration of hash power would not only undermine Bitcoin's decentralized network, but also make it vulnerable to state intervention. Furthermore, Trump's administration might push for a patriotic blockchain fork, a government-approved version of Bitcoin that meets regulatory standards while sidelining its more radical offshoots. Such a move would fracture the community, forcing developers and users to choose between the official Bitcoin and its underground counterparts. This bifurcation would weaken the network and dilute the ideological purity that had been central to the Bitcoin's identity. The very nature of decentralization thrives on geographic and ideological diversity, a bulwark against concentrated power. Bitcoin was never just a currency, it was a philosophy, a rebellion against the financial status quo, much like punk rock was a rebellion against the polished conformity of mainstream music. Both emerged as disruptive forces, rejecting authority and refusing to conform to established norms. But just as punk eventually found its way into glossy magazines and corporate playlists, Bitcoin now risks being co opted by the very institutions it sought to disrupt. What began as a defiant middle finger to the establishment risks becoming the hand that props it up. The philosophy of Bitcoin, like that of punk rock, thrives on decentralization, autonomy, and a relentless resistance to co optation. But these ideals require constant vigilance and a widespread commitment to protecting the network from external control. If the crypto world celebrates mainstream adoption without questioning the strings attached, it risks betraying its foundational principles. Bitcoin's magic does not lie in market value or institutional approval. It lies in its defiance, its ability to offer a financial system free from the grasp of governments and corporations. Satoshi didn't create Bitcoin to join the establishment, but to challenge it. If that ethos is lost, Bitcoin will no longer be a revolution. It will be a relic, a cautionary tale of what happens when the rebellion sells out to the system it was meant to overthrow. That's a really, really good piece and very thoughtful, and I can't disagree with it. You know, the way Bitcoin is, it's kind of like for everybody, right? So no, you can't stop Bitcoin. You can't stop people from adopting Bitcoin. Can't stop corporations. You can't stop governments. You can't stop anybody really from because it's permissionless. So um, as long as the community, the people, the hodlers, the people that hold Bitcoin in self custody, which according to the distribution, is almost all of it is in private hands. As long as we can keep that ethos, I think the network can survive. But it is easy to get swept up into the narrative. And for me personally, if there was a government hard fork, I would be keeping the original Bitcoin myself and probably selling the fake Bitcoin. That turned out to be a wise choice the last time there was a hard fork. So anyway, great piece. And again, links to everything I reviewed in the show notes. Finally, I wanted to highlight this week's featured post on the Bitcoin Fortress Substack. The article is entitled "The Burden of Knowing," which is I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. There is a burden in knowing about broken money and being able to live your life in the broken system with that knowledge. So check it out. There's a link in the show notes. And then finally, I wanted to recognize the weekly top boosts on Fountain. First is God's Death, at God's Death with 536 sats. Thank you, sir. And at Duke Nukem with 24 sats. Thank you as well. And with that, I will thank you all for listening to the show. If you enjoyed, please like and leave a comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. You can also follow my uh, uh, Substack at bitcoinfortress.substack.com, and you can follow me on Nostr. My NPub is in the show notes. And with that, I will talk to y'all next week. Bye bye.